أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. السلام على المهدي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we will be continuing our series Died or Perished, which we put on hold due to the month of Muharram and the month of Safar. Now, if this is your first time watching, please keep in mind this is part of a series where we're trying to see if it's possible for us to identify Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam right now before his reappearance. So I do advise you that you actually watch the first episodes, almost 9 of them so far, and then come to this one. But if you still want to watch, by all means. Now, in the previous episode, we were discussing the name of the Imam alayhi as-salam. So we said that the ulama and the scholars have differed when it comes to the name of the Imam. Those who said it's haram, forbidden to mention his name, and those who said no, it is allowed to say his name. And each of these groups, they had their own references, their own ahadith. But one thing they missed and they did not calculate is that the Imam Salamullah alayhi has a hidden name. So during the Ghaybah, he alayhi salamullah, he would take a personality and he would take a hidden name just before his emergence. 10, 20, 30 years, I don't know. But before that, he would have a name that everyone would know him by that hidden name. And for those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the tawfiq to identify the Imam and they know which hidden name he has taken, then it becomes forbidden on them to say that name. And if they do, then they have to be prepared for the punishment. That's what the narrations we have discussed in the previous lesson. Now, after we have concluded that the Imam alayhi salam has a hidden secret name which the Ahlul Bayt salamullah alayhim talked about. They did not say the name, but they did tell us that he has a secret name. Which brings us to the most controversial, or let's say a trial that the Shia would go through. And that is the call in the heavens, al-Sayhah, which is one of the 5 definite signs. I had discussed al-Sayhah in other episodes in a different series, but because it's related to our topic, so we have to go through it again, but with a different lens. Now, the Sayhah is Jibreel saying the name of the Imam. He says, "O people, Fulan ibn Fulan is the Imam." Now, all the narrations that we have, everyone without exception, it says that Jibreel would say, "Fulan ibn Fulan," so the son of so. It never ever mentions his name. Now, if you do, by some chance, find a narration that says Muhammad ibn al-Hasan huwa al-Imam, please come and inform me, because I have not seen such a narration. And I will correct my statement. But until then, all the narrations, without exception, they say Fulan ibn Fulan, bi ismihi wa ismi abih, as we will see in the narrations, by his name and his father's name. They never say Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. Why? If it is known to be Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, which we know the Imam, his name is Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, why don't the riwayat say Muhammad ibn al-Hasan? Why his name is always Fulan ibn Fulan? And every time you come through a hadith, whether it's relating to Imam Mahdi or not, and sometimes the names, the narrator or the Imam does not want to mention the name, so they say Fulan ibn Fulan, so the son of so. So you have to imagine and you have to ponder and ask yourself, who is so and so? And especially when we deal with the hadith, especially at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, where there's a lot of fitnah, so and so comes more often. Now, we see the same thing, same trend, in the call in the heavens when Jibreel announces the name of the Imam alayhi salam, so and so. Now, is so and so going to be Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, or is it going to be the secret hidden name of the Imam? Now, if it's Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, it will make things a lot easier for people. Okay, people will be like, they'll be happy. It's Muhammad bin Hasan, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. But what if Jibreel alayhi salam announces his secret hidden name, which people know him by, at least in the time of Zuhur? Now, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be very, very problematic for people, especially if that person is known to be a bad person, at least in the media sense, or people don't know much about him. So it's going to be a huge fitnah, a huge trial for the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, to be more precise, as we will see. Now, when we talk about the Sayhah, now Sayhah is one of the most definite signs of the Imam alayhi salam, to will differentiate everything. Now, we have a hadith, or not a hadith, but rather a letter from Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. He himself sent to his last deputy, Ali ibn Muhammad as-Samari, when he said to him, look, you're about to pass away in about a few days, 6 days to be precise, so do not, make sure you tell our Shia, there will be no more ambassadors, and you are the last. And then the Imam says the following, وَسَيَأْتِي شِيعَتِي مَنْ يَدَّعِ الْمُشَاهَدَةِ. And amongst my Shia, those who will come and acclaim that they have seen me, or they have seen me in the sense that they have relationship with me, like Abdullah Hashim and Hassani, Yamani, and all these morons. They are claimed to be the ambassadors of the Imam. He says, if that anyone that does that, then know this. ألا فمن ادعى المشاهدة قبل خروج السفياني. Therefore, anyone who claims to have something to do with me, whether he's seen me, has communicated with me before the emergence of Sufyani, was-Sayhah, فهو كذاب, for he's a liar. And this is how you don't waste your time with people like Abdullah Hashim and all these, what should I call them? I want to swear, but obviously I'm trying to be more respectful. Anyway, so these idiots, these morons, if sometimes we give them more credit, we sit and we discuss them and we debate them and we bring a hadith here. Why would we do that? The Imam said, Imam Mahdi himself said, anyone claims to have anything to do with me without the emergence of Sufyan, I'll say he's a liar. End the story. Don't bother yourself. Don't waste time. So here the Imam alayhi salam, what he did, he said that the Sayhah is one of the definite signs. So he did not mention the other signs. He says Sufyani, his arch enemy, and Sayhah, which will identify him. So we can tell that the Sayhah is a very definite, very important sign in the emergence of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. We also mentioned a hadith from Al-Mufaddal when he was talking to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he asked him about the emergence of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. How is it going to happen? So the Imam said to him something really interesting, something shocking in its nature, if you have an eye, or let's say if you have a sight, okay? Because everyone reads this hadith and passes through it. The Imam says, Ya Mufaddal, يظهر في شبهة ليستبين. The initiation of the Zuhur of the Imam, he comes in a state of doubt, where people don't know, is this the Imam or not the Imam? So this is a state of doubt that we're going to have to face, me and you. And then he says, فَيَعْلُو ذِكْرَهُ. In this state of doubt, this Imam, in his hidden state, he will be known to all. Everyone's going to be talking about him. But yet no one still knows he is the Mahdi, because he hasn't announced himself to be the Mahdi. And then he says, وَيَظْهَرُ أَمْرَهُ. His affair, what he stands for, will also be known to people. But we're still in the state of doubt. وَيُنَادَى بِإِسْمِهِ. He will be called by his name. وَكُنْيَتِهِ, and his nickname. وَنَسَبِهِ, and his family. وَيَكْثُرُ ذُكْرُهُ عَلَى أَفْوَاهِ الْمُحَقِّينَ وَالْمُبْطِلِينَ. And his name and his affair and whatever he did will be the talk of the town. Everyone will be talking about him, whether they muhaqqeen, those who are truthful, or those who are not truthful. وَالْمُوَافِقِينَ وَالْمُخَالِفِينَ. And those who agree with him and those who disagree with him. Why does this happen? The Imam says, لِتَلْزُمُهُمُ الْحُجَّةِ. So they have no excuse to say, oh, we don't know. Allah says, well, why don't you look into this guy? Why did you disregard him? Or why did you believe whatever has been said about him? عَلَى أَنَّ قَصَصْنَاهُ وَدَلَلْنَا عَلَيْهِ. For we have given a hadith, we have given you much to lead to him. وَنَسَبْنَاهُ وَسَمَّيْنَاهُ وَكَنَّيْنَاهُ. We've given you all the details that you require. وَقُلْنَا. And if that wasn't enough, we also said, Sami Jaddihi Rasulullah, he has the name of Rasulullah, which is the Imam always brings you back to the basic. But the shubha here, the doubt that we're going to face, is the Imam going to appear in a personality with a name that everyone knows, everyone has been talking about, but in the hidden identity. Moving on. Now, after we know this is the case, we go back to our original question. Will Jibreel alayhi salam announce Imam Mahdi alayhi salam by his name Muhammad ibn al-Hasan or Fulan ibn Fulan, which is a hidden identity? Let's just pick a name and let's say, I don't know, let me think of a name that no one is going to pick on the comment and say, Astaghfirullah. All right, let's just call him Ali ibn Qasim, right? So that's his hidden secret name, Ali ibn Qasim. Now, is he going to call him Muhammad ibn al-Hasan or Ali ibn Qasim? Which one is going to be? Now, the hadith from the Ahlul Bayt, which a hadith which I mentioned for you guys in the previous episode, from Dawood al-Riqi, one of the companions of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. And he came to Imam al-Baqir salamullah alayhi and he says to him, قلت لأبي عبد الله جعلت فداك Imam Sadiq, sorry. قد طال هذا الأمر. This affair has taken too long. حتى ضاقت قلوبنا. Our hearts have really is getting really tight in this affair. ومتنا كمدا. We're about to die out of sorrow and pain for not seeing the Imam alayhi salam. Then the Imam said to him, and this is where what we're trying to get at. He says, إن هذا الأمر آيس ما يكون. The affair of the Mahdi alayhi salam and the appearance of the Imam alayhi salam, it will reach a state of desperation amongst the followers of the Ahlul Bayt or the followers of the Mahdi. It will be the last state of desperation, and let's say they lose hope completely. They lose hope, despair. That's what yes is. Despair is where you have absolutely no more hope. He says this affair will be the worst and most, suffocating time for the Shia, and they will despair the most. And he said, وَأَشَدُّ غَمَّ, and most sorrowful. Now, obviously, you have to pay attention to the words of the Imam when he says yes and gham. Yes is you lose hope. Gham is a state of sorrow, sadness that overtakes you. Why would the Shia fall into this case? He says, ينادي مناد من السماء. A caller will call from the heavens. باسم القائم واسم أبيه. The caller, he will call by the name of the Mahdi alayhi salam and his father. And his name was Fulan ibn Fulan. When the Shia hear this call and they hear this name, they break down. They become bankrupt because they were banking on Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. Now they're hearing Ali ibn Qasim. That's the name that we chose for the sake of the arguments as an example, just so you guys keep track with me. And the Imam says when they hear this call, that's it, they lose hope. Because how could this person, which we know very well, be the Imam? Were we expecting the Imam to be someone else? This is the fitnah. This is how people get tested and trialed. Now some of you say, why would Allah do this to us? This is not fair. Inshallah, we'll discuss that later. But for now, let's just stay with the hadith. Then the narrator, Abu Dawud al-Riqi, says, قُلْتُ جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ. If this is the case, may I be ransomed to you. مَا اسْمُهُ. What is his name? I mean, that narrator, Abu Dawud al-Riqi, one of the close companions, obviously he would have heard the hadith that says, اسْمُهُ اسْمِي وَاسْمَ أَبِي اسْمَ أَبِي. At least, to say the least. That his name is my name and his father's name is my father's name is his father's name. Or he had heard the hadith of Shia, which say his name is Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, which we have plenty, which we already mentioned. So why would this narrator again assist to him? Okay, in this case, what's the name? The Imam says, okay, you know what? I'm gonna bring you back to the basics. Ismuhu isma nabi wa isma bi isma was. This doesn't concern you yet. This is for people that will come. It doesn't concern you. And we also mentioned the hadith of Abu Khalid al-Kabuli in the previous episode, where he comes to the Imam alayhi salam, says to him, Imam Baqir says to him, your father has described the Imam so much so that if I see him in the market, I will grab him by the hand. Then the Imam said to him, then what else do you want? What else can I give you more than that? He said, no, I want the name. And then the Imam says to him, as for the name, no, I'm not going to tell you the name. So obviously they're talking about a different name of an Imam that we assume is going to be someone, but in reality it's someone else. Another hadith from Imam Rida Salamullah alayhi, he says, كَأَنِّي بِهِ آيَسُ مَا يَكُونُ. When it comes to the affair of the Imam and the appearance of the Imam, he says the worst case, the most desperate case, when everyone will lose hope, despair, is ما كانوا قد نودوا نداء يسمعهم من البعد كما يسمعهم من القرب. They will hear a call, those who are far will hear it as much as those who are close. يكون رحمة على المؤمن عذابا على الكافرين. For the believers will become, good news, and for the disbelievers going to be a punishment. So this call of Jibreel is going to be a very problematic call, because we're expecting him to call the Imam by one name. Yet again, we find that Jibreel might call the Imam in a different name. Now, whether you want to believe this concept or not, that's up to you, but at least keep it in your mind that could happen. It's a 50-50 chance. So you can say, no. I'm going to go with the fact that it's going to be Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, and I have nothing against that. Or you can say, no, it could be someone else. Also, keep it as a 50-50 chance until we get to finish the ahadith. We also have a hadith from Abi Basir and Abi Ja'far alayhi salam, al-Imam al-Sadiq, and this is a very detailed hadith when it talks about the call in the heavens and the fitnah that we will witness when the Imam alayhi salam comes. He says, the Imam says, al-Sayhah is going to happen. He says, إن الله عزيز حكيم ثم قال الصيحة لا تكون إلا في شهر رمضان. That the call is going to be happen in the month of Ramadan. And then he says, وهي صيحة جبرائيل إلى هذا الخلق. It is the call of the archangel Jibreel to this creation. ثم قال, the Imam says, ينادي مناد من السماء. A caller will call in the heavens. باسم القائم, by the name of the riser. فيسمع من بالمشرق ومن بالمغرب. Those who are in the east and the west will hear this call. And then the Imam says, لا يبقى راقد إلا استيقظ. Those who are sitting will wake up, or sleeping would wake up. ولا قائم إلا قعد. And those who are standing will sit down. ولا قام على رجليه فزع من ذلك الصوت. ولا قاعد إلا قام على رجليه فزع من ذلك الصوت. And whoever sitting will get up out of the fear, not fear, but the shock of this voice. So they hear the call and everyone just freaks out. If you're sleeping, you'll wake up. If you're standing, you'll sit. If you're sitting, you'll get up. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi, he says, فَرَحِمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ اعْتَبَرَ بِذَلِكَ الصَّوْتِ فَأَجَابَ. May Allah bless those who listen to this voice and answer the call. فَإِنَّ الصَّوْتُ الْأَوَّلِ هُوَ صَوْتُ جِبْرَائِيلَ الرُّوحُ الْأَمِينَ. For the first call is the call of Jibreel. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi continues to say, he says, فَلَا تَشُكُّوا فِي ذَلِكَ. When you hear that voice, which you might not like, فَلَا تَشُكُّوا, do not doubt. Now, if it was Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, why would we doubt? Why would the Imam says, do not doubt? Moving on. And he says, وَأَسْمِعُوا وَأَطِيعُوا. So first, do not doubt. Second, obey and give allegiance. That's it. You hear the first voice, it doesn't matter whose the name is. It could be any name. It could be, I don't want to use example because every time I use example, people start to pick on the examples that I use. You think of the most unrealistic, like the most hated name in the world. If you hear that to be the Imam, then just accept it. That's what the Imam is saying to you. It's the first call, whatever name it might be. I don't care who. You use example from your own. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi says, وَفِي آخر النهار صوت الملعون إبليس. And at the end of the day, of this, when this call happens, Iblis will also make a call himself, not a phone call. إلى أن قال فإن فلانا قتل مظلوما. That this person, so Iblis will bring a name as well that goes against the first name, and he says that this person was killed unjustly. Now also this needs a bit of decoding, which I will leave for another day. I don't have the time now. And then the Imam Salamullah alayhi says, وَعَلَامَةُ ذَلِكَ. And the sign to this, so you could know where you're going, ينادي باسم القائم واسم أبيه. Again, the Imam repeats that it's going to be his name and his father's name. حتى تسمعه العذراء في خدرها. Even the chaste woman in her house would hear that voice. فتحرض أباها وأخاها على الخروج. And she'll start to push her father and her brothers to go fight with this man. And then the Imam alayhi salam, again, he goes back to the Iblis also says the same thing. ينادي اللعين باسم فلان واسم أبيه. And he says this guy got killed and he was unjustly killed. Why does he do that? He said يريد بذلك الفتنة. يريد بذلك الفتنة. That when the call of shaitan comes, he's going to bring a name in the same caliber. Or sometimes it could be the same name, but he gives a different dimension of it. So if Jibreel says, this Fulan, as we say in our example, Ali ibn Qasim is the Imam, he says, no, Ali ibn Qasim got killed. He's not alive. That could be one of the interpretation. Or he says, no, he brings a name that you could be familiar with. So let's say he says, I don't know, one of our scholars, he will mention his name, one of our highly respected scholars, he says, Fulan is the Imam. While Jibreel says someone maybe you don't like is the Imam. So which one would you accept? Obviously you're going to go with the call of shaitan. And the Imam says, فَاتَّبُعُ الصَّوْتُ الْأَوَّلِ. Whatever you hear, go with the first voice. وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَالْأَخِيرَ أَن تَفْتَتُنُوا بِهِ. And I warn you, do not think of the second voice because it's a fitna. What does a fitna mean here? Fitna means that you're going to fall in a situation where the second sound, the second call, the second sound that you hear makes more logic. Let me give you an example. Like I'm forced to use a really stupid example here. Let me give you an example. Let's for example, let's say that Jibreel calls in the heavens and he says, I don't know, Muhammad ibn Salman is the Mahdi. And then the second call says what? It says Sayyid Hassan Nasrullah, for example, or Sayyid Ali Khamenei, or Sayyid Mujtaba is the Imam. Now, obviously, which one would you go? So if I want to cause fitna and get you in trouble, I have to make it so hard for you to understand who is who. I'm not going to make it very clear for you. I'm not going to give you choices here. That's the idea of fitna. Is that I want you to fall. The Quran says, أَلَا فِي الْفِتْنَةِ وَقَعُوا. Surely in the fitna they fell. That's what fitna is. So if I use Muhammad ibn Salman, la'antullahi alayh, and then I say Sayyid Ali Khamenei ridwanullahi alayh, naturally you would say, I don't care about the first voice. I'm going to go with the second. But what does the Imam say? He says, إِيَّاكَ أَن تَفْتَتَنِ بِهِ. I warn you, do not fall victim to the second call. And this notion of إِيَّاكَ وَالصَّوْتُ الثَّانِي is repeated in the ahadith and plenty, which I'm not going to go through. Another hadith from Abi Basir and Imam Sadiq salamullah alayhi. I'm just trying to enforce this notion. Otherwise, you can do the reading yourself. He says, the Imam says, قُلْتُ بِمَا يُنَادَى قال بِاسْمِهِ وَاسْمِ أَبِيهِ. The call in the heavens, what is going to be said? He said his name and his father's name. أَلَا أَنَّ فُلَانَ ابْنَ فُلَانَ قَائِمَ عَلَى Muhammad. Again, the Imam says it will be said that so on, the son of so, is the Imam. فَاسْمَعُوا لَهُ وَأَطِيعُوا. Again, listen to him and obey. Don't make your own choices here. Don't think twice. Whatever you hear, obey to this, listen and obey to this name. Moving on. Imam Baqir salamullah alayhi in a hadith, he says, فَإِذَا نُقْرَ فِي النَّاقُورِ. This verse in the Quran, he says to him, I said to him, what is the naqur that Allah talks about, that bell? He says, the Imam says, هُوَ النِّدَاءُ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. It is a call from the heavens. أَلَا إِنَّ وَلِيُّكُمْ فُلَانَ ابْنُ فُلَانَ. Surely your commander is so, the son of so. القائم بالحق. He is the riser with the truth. ينادي به جبرائيل في 3 ساعات في ذلك اليوم. 3 times Jibreel will announce this name. He said, then the Imam says, فَذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ عَسِيرٌ. That was going to be a very, very harsh day. On whom? عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ غَيْرَ يَسِيرٌ. Especially for those who disbelieve in that name, on that person, is going to be really harsh on them. Again, another hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, again, he says the first call is from the heavens in the name of the Qa'im. فَقُلْتُ أَيْنَ أَصْلَحَكَ اللَّهُ. Where do I find this in the Quran? Because some people want everything from the Quran. It says, إِن نَشَأْ نُنزِلْ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ آيَةٌ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ آيَةً فَظَلَّتْ أَعْنَاقُهُمْ لَهَا خَاضِعِينَ. We could bring a sign from the heavens that their neck is twisted. They can't do anything anymore. They're forced to accept it. That's what's going to happen to us. He says that, and then the Imam interprets this ayah. He says, قال إذا سمعوا الصوت أصبحوا وكأنما على رؤوسهم الطير. They will wake up as if the birds are speaking on their heads. Like they'll be like this. They don't know what to do anymore. This is what's going to happen to us. Because we're assuming it's going to be Muhammad ibn Hassan. Sadly, we're going to hear something else. So I'm just trying to bring this to your attention. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi, another hadith. Obviously, the companions of the Imams, they have understood this concept very well. They were asking about the second name. They're trying to understand how they can get out of this mess. So they said to him, one of the companions said to the Imam alayhi salam, well, in this case, what do we do? The Imam Salamullah alayhi said, قال سمعت أبا عبد الله يقول هما صيحتان صيحة في أول الليل وصيحة في آخر الليل. There are two calls. One is in the beginning of the night, one is at the end of the night. And that differs depending on the hadith. Sometimes it's in the morning, sometimes in the afternoon. That's not something important. And he says فقلت كيف ذلك? How does that happen? He says فقال واحدة من السماء. One calls from the heavens وواحدة من إبليس. And one is from Shaitan himself. فقلت وكيف تعرف هذه من هذا? That's how the companions used to ask. And how do I know this call from this call? Because obviously it's going to be fitnah. And this is where it boils down to, brothers and sisters. He says, قال فقال يعرفها من كان سمع بها قبل أن تكون. Those who have heard about the call and the trial of the call and what's going to happen, this guy's going to be safe. Those who know that they could be subjected to a different name, this guy's going to be safe. But those who have never heard of this concept that the Jibreel could call another call, they don't know that they were under the assumption it's going to be Muhammad ibn Hassan. The Imam said these guys are going to fall. But those who have heard, which makes you guys, now you have heard this, so at least it's 50-50 now. So before you were 100% certain it's going to be Muhammad ibn Hassan, now I have given you a different perspective on this. It could be someone else. So the Imam says those who have heard it before, they will be safe. وَيَصَدِّقُ بِهَا مَنْ كَانَ بِهَا مُؤْمِنًا قَبْلَ أَن تَكُونَ. And those who will believe this, the first call, are those who have heard of it and they believed in it before it even happens. Then the Imam Salamullah alayhi reads this ayah from chapter Yunus, verse 35. أَفَمَنْ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْحَقِّ. And it's one of the most beautiful verses in the Quran. أَفَمَنْ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْحَقِّ أَحَقُّ أَنْ يُتَّبَعَ أَمَّنْ لَا يَهْدِي إِلَّا أَنْ يُهْدَى مَا لَكُمْ كَيْفَ تَحْكُمُونَ. The ayah says, those who guide to the truth should be followed, or those who cannot guide unless they are themselves guided should be followed. How do you judge? That's a Quran questioning. Anyway, let me end this topic. And then the Imam, we have a hadith from the Imam that warns us about the second call. Is Iblis trying to do fitnah. A hadith from the Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi says, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَالْأَخِيرَ أَن تَفْتَنُوا بِهِ. And I warn you with the second call, do not fall for the second call. And then the Imam Salamullah alayhi says, this call of Iblis, حَتَّى يَسْمَعَهُ. Now this is for Imam Mahdi حَتَّى يَسْمَعَ كُلُّ مَقَوْمٍ. The Imam says, then the guy, one of the companions says to the Imam, why would Iblis do that? If the first call is so clear and everyone is going to be happy, excited for it, they're not going to fall for the second one. The Imam says, no. إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَا يَدَعُهُمْ. Don't think Shaitan's going to let this go like that. And he says, حَتَّى يُنَادِي كَمَا نَادَى بِرَسُولِ اللَّهِ يَوْمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. He will call in the same way that he called in the Aqaba. Shaitan, being stated in the hadith, he made 3 calls that have been heard by people. One of them is the day of Aqaba, where he called the people living in this area that Muhammad and his companions have came, go fight him. And people didn't know what that voice was. So the Imam says, also Shaitan is going to do the same. He's going to put you in fitnah. And then the Imam Salamullah again in the Hadith Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, Yunadi bi ismi fulan. He will, Shaitan will also bring a name of fulan. He says fulan was killed. قتل مظلوما يريد بذلك الفتنة. He brings that name just to put people in the state of fitna. فاتبعوا الصوت الأول. Follow the first call. وإياكم والأخير. Again, this إياكم, I warn you, keeps repeating itself in the ahadith. Why? Because the Imam alayhi salam knows that people going to be victims of the call of Iblis. And interestingly, in this hadith it says, لا يشكل عليكم إذا نودي باسمه واسم أبيه وأمه. And do not doubt if the call comes with the Imam's name, his father's name, and his mother's name. Now, we all know his mother's name is Hamida. Take that back. His mother's name is Narjis in the riwayat. But we also have other riwayat that says his mother is Hamid. So, again, I'm not going to go into much. Again, I will end with this hadith. This is going to be the hadith I'm going to end with. So, the Imam Salamullah alayh talks to Al-Mufaddal, and he says to him, a very, very long, lengthy hadith. He says to him, then in the morning, Jibreel will call the khalaiq, he will call to the people, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, with an Arabic tongue. يَسْمَعُهُ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, those in the heavens and the earth will hear this name. يَا مَعْشَرَ الْخَلَائِقِ, this is the content of the call. All creation. هَذَا مَهْدِيُّ آلِ مُحَمَّدٍ, this is the Mahdi, the guided of the household of Ali Muhammad. وَيُسَمِّيهِ بِإِسْ, then that's just in brackets, it's not part of the hadith. Which says يسميه باسم جده ورسول الله ويكنيه بكنيته. This is added from the narrator or the author of the book. فاتبعوه تهتدوا, that if you follow this guy, which the Jibreel is going to announce his name, if you follow him, فاتبعوه تهتدوا, if you follow him you'll be guided. ولا تخالفوه فتضلوا, do not go against him and you'll perish. And then he says, أول من يلبي, the first to answer this call. And then he says, the Imam says at the end, وَلَمْ يَبْقَ ذُو إِذْنٍ إِلَّا سَمِعَ ذَلِكَ, whoever has a hearing would hear this call. وتقبل الخلائق من البدو والحضر والبر والبحر يحدث بعضهم بعضا, that people, where they are in the land, the Bedouins in the sea, they will be talking about this. Oh, Fulan is the Mahdi? How is that possible? And they're going to be a point of discussion for them. And there's one more I would want to say. The Imam Sadiq Salamullah says, when it comes to this fitna of the call, people expecting Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, and actually the call comes out to be someone else, he says, وَيَفْتُنُهُمْ, Iblis will make a fitna for them. فكم في ذلك اليوم من شاك متحير قد هوى في النار. On that day, how many are those who are going to be lost, confused, they end up in hellfire. So the call itself is going to put a lot of people in hellfire. Why? Because they're going to hear a name they are not familiar with, or at least they're familiar with but they don't like. And then they're going to accept because Shaitan is going to give them a name they like. Once they reject the first name, it means they are rejecting the Imam. If they reject the Imam says, مُتَحَيِّرًا قَدْ هَوَى فِي النَّارِ. He's so confused, he falls in hell. And then we will come when we look at the hadith that talks about the Shia rejecting their Imam. That's the case. That's why people reject their Imam at the end of times. So I will leave it here, inshallah. We will continue our discussion of this concept of the hidden identity in the next episodes. But for now, guys, keep in mind the call of Jibreel is not going to be Muhammad ibn al-Hasan. It's going to be the second name. Now you have been warned. I've done my duty. Allahumma ishhad anni ballaghт. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.